I want to share a story with you today, a story about fear, hope, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger. It's a story that changed the way I see the world, and it all begins with one person, a Muslim, who saved me and changed everything. Kindness has a way of appearing when we least expect it, often from sources we never would have predicted. In my life, this became painfully clear during one of the darkest periods I have ever faced. I was struggling, overwhelmed by fear, uncertainty, and isolation. It felt as though no one could understand what I was going through, and I began to believe that I had to face my challenges alone. I was carrying a heavy burden, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally, and every day felt like an uphill battle. I never imagined that a single act of kindness could change the trajectory of my life, let alone that it would come from someone whose background and beliefs I barely understood at the time. Then, out of nowhere, someone stepped into my life. A Muslim stranger, someone I had no prior connection with, offered his help. At first, it was subtle, almost unnoticed. He listened without judgment, spoke words of encouragement, and quietly offered practical support. There was no fanfare, no expectation of recognition, and no underlying motive that I could see. It was pure, selfless kindness. At a time when I felt invisible and unworthy, this simple act of concern and attention reminded me that human goodness still existed in the world. That small gesture was a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't truly alone. What made this act of kindness so remarkable was not only its timing but its sincerity. In moments of crisis, we often look for solutions that are immediate or tangible, someone to solve our problems for us, but true kindness transcends these expectations. It doesn't demand repayment, it doesn't measure success by the outcome, and it doesn't ask for recognition. The stranger's generosity wasn't about fixing everything in my life in one stroke. It was about being present, showing empathy, and sharing a moment of humanity that I desperately needed. It was the recognition that my suffering mattered, that my life mattered, and that I was not alone in my struggle. This experience also revealed the profound ripple effect that a single act of kindness can create. That initial gesture, which might have seemed small or ordinary to an outside observer, completely changed the way I approached life. I began to notice kindness more often, to value connection over judgment, and to understand that people's actions are a reflection of their hearts, not merely their labels or identities. It taught me that kindness doesn't need to be grandiose. Sometimes it is the quiet, consistent support that changes lives in ways we can't even imagine. Looking back, I realize that the most unexpected kindness is often the most transformative. It challenges our assumptions, reshapes our perspectives, and restores our faith in humanity. That Muslim stranger showed me that compassion can transcend cultural, religious, and social boundaries. It reminded me that in a world where fear, prejudice, and misunderstanding often dominate, simple human decency can shine brighter than anything else. It is a reminder that being kind, even when no one is watching, is one of the most powerful forces we have. Unexpected kindness is more than just a helpful action. It is a lesson. It teaches us humility, patience, and empathy. It reminds us that we are all connected and that even in the darkest times, there are people willing to step forward, sometimes silently, to lift us when we cannot lift ourselves. That stranger's actions did more than save me. They changed me. And in that transformation, I found a new understanding of what it means to truly care for another human being. Faith is often thought of as something personal, something we practice quietly in our hearts, but through rituals, prayers, or beliefs. But the true impact of faith is far more powerful when it moves beyond personal practice and becomes action that touches the lives of others. I experienced this firsthand through the life-changing kindness of a Muslim who came into my life at a moment when I felt completely lost. His faith wasn't something he spoke about constantly, nor did he try to convince me of his beliefs. Instead, it was evident in the way he lived every day, the way he treated others, the way he approached challenges, and the way he extended compassion without expecting anything in return. It was in his actions that the real power of faith revealed itself. At a time when I was struggling, I was deeply skeptical of people's intentions. I had learned to be wary of strangers and hesitant to trust anyone because past experiences had shown me that people often acted out of self-interest, but his behavior was different. It was guided by principles that came from something larger than himself, a commitment to helping others simply because it was the right thing to do. This revealed to me an essential truth. Faith is most impactful not when it is preached or debated, but when it is demonstrated through deeds that uplift and protect those in need. His faith inspired him to act with courage, patience, and empathy, and witnessing this transformed the way I understood both religion and humanity. What struck me most was that his faith did not manifest as a rigid rule book or a set of expectations. Instead, it was a living, breathing force that motivated him to be compassionate, generous, and understanding. He helped me without judgment, without asking questions, and without making me feel indebted. There was no agenda, no expectation of recognition or reward. Every action he took reflected a deep sense of moral responsibility rooted in his beliefs. It became clear to me that faith, when truly internalized, is not just about personal salvation or spiritual growth. It is about the impact we can have on the world around us. Faith also gave him strength in moments when others might have faltered. I observed how he handled challenges with a calm confidence, how he maintained hope and clarity even in difficult situations. It was not blind optimism, but a deliberate choice to trust in principles that guide moral action. That trust allowed him to help me when I was at my most vulnerable, showing me that faith can be a source of courage, resilience, and unwavering support. The way he lived his life demonstrated that faith is not a passive belief, but an active, powerful force that drives people to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. Through this experience, I learned that the impact of faith extends far beyond the individual. It creates ripples, touching those around us in ways we may never fully understand. His actions showed me that the essence of faith lies not in what is said, but in what is done. It has the power to heal, to restore hope, and to transform perspectives. It reshaped my understanding of what it means to be human and revealed that the principles guiding someone's faith can be a source of universal good, transcending cultural or religious boundaries. The faith of this Muslim stranger didn't just help me survive, it changed me. It challenged my assumptions, deepened my empathy, and inspired me to act with kindness in my own life. I realized that faith at its best is not about dogma or labels. It is about living a life that reflects compassion, integrity, and selflessness. The impact of faith is not measured in words or rituals, but in the way it compels people to be forces of good in the world, quietly transforming lives one act at a time. Stereotypes are some of the most insidious barriers in our world. They shape perceptions, influence decisions, and often prevent genuine understanding between people. I never fully realized how powerful and damaging these assumptions could be until I experienced the life-altering kindness of a Muslim stranger who defied every expectation I had unconsciously held. Before meeting him, I, like many others, carried subtle prejudices shaped by media portrayals, societal narratives, and hearsay. I assumed I knew what people of certain faiths or backgrounds were like, and I measured them through a lens that had been distorted long before I ever met them personally. This experience, however, shattered every preconceived notion I had, showing me the human cost of stereotypes and the transformative power of seeing someone for who they truly are. From the very first interaction, I realized that this person was nothing like the caricatures I had unknowingly internalized. He was patient, compassionate, and willing to go out of his way to help me without judgment or hesitation. His actions contradicted every expectation I had formed based on stereotypes about Muslims or people from different cultures. He was not a figure of fear, extremism, or rigidity. Instead, he was a living example of kindness, empathy, and integrity, demonstrating that character cannot be defined by religion, ethnicity, or social labels. Every gesture he made, no matter how small, challenged the false narratives I had accepted as truth. What made the breaking of these stereotypes even more profound was the context in which it happened. I was in a vulnerable state, and I had little patience or energy. to navigate preconceived notions or social expectations. Yet in his presence, I was forced to confront my assumptions. I had to acknowledge the stark difference between the story I had believed about people like him and the reality of his actions. This confrontation was uncomfortable at first. It required humility and self-reflection, but it was precisely in that discomfort that true learning occurred. I realized how often people are judged unfairly, not on their deeds or intentions, but on the labels society has assigned to them. Breaking stereotypes is not just about being proven wrong once, it is about the lasting change in perspective that follows. After this encounter, I began to see individuals as complex, multifaceted human beings rather than representatives of a generalized category. I understood that kindness, integrity, and courage are not confined to any one group. They are universal traits that can emerge in anyone, anywhere. This realization reshaped the way I approach new relationships, how I interpret news and stories, and how I interact with people whose backgrounds are different from my own. It reminded me that the world is far richer and more diverse than any stereotype can capture. Furthermore, this experience taught me the importance of confronting stereotypes actively, not passively. It is not enough to simply hope that preconceived notions will fade. We must seek experiences and connections that challenge our assumptions, that allow us to see people as individuals rather than as symbols of a category. My interaction with this Muslim stranger became a turning point in my understanding of empathy and open-mindedness. It demonstrated that personal experience is the most powerful antidote to prejudice because it engages not just the mind, but also the heart. Breaking stereotypes is not a single event. It is a process of unlearning and relearning, a commitment to seeing people beyond the labels society places on them. This stranger did more than help me in a moment of need. He helped me confront my biases, reconsider my judgments, and embrace a more compassionate, human-centered worldview. By defying the narrow expectations I had carried, he showed me that true understanding requires openness, courage, and the willingness to see people for who they truly are, not who we think they should be. Sometimes in life, a single encounter has the power to alter everything we thought we knew about ourselves, about others, and about the world. I experienced this firsthand through the unexpected intervention of a Muslim stranger who came into my life at a moment when I was overwhelmed by fear, doubt, and uncertainty. At the time, I was struggling not only with external challenges, but also with internal despair. I felt stuck, isolated, and unsure of how I could move forward. It seemed as though the weight of my problems was insurmountable, and I had almost resigned myself to living in fear or resignation. Then he appeared, not with grand gestures or dramatic interventions, but with quiet, steady support that would change the trajectory of my life in ways I could never have imagined. The influence he had on me was profound precisely because it was subtle at first. He didn't swoop in and solve everything for me. Instead, he offered something far more meaningful: presence, understanding, and guidance. He listened without judgment, offered advice without pressure, and acted with a kind of patience that was almost transformative. Through his actions, I realized that life-changing influence is not always about dramatic interventions. It is about being seen, being supported, and being inspired to take steps forward even when they feel impossible. His presence reminded me that I mattered, that my life had value, and that it was possible to face challenges with courage and resilience. What made his influence life-changing was the way it reshaped my mindset. Before meeting him, I had believed that my struggles were permanent, that my limitations defined me, and that I was largely on my own. But through his example, I began to see another way, a way where hope, courage, and determination were accessible even in the darkest moments. He demonstrated through action, not words, that people have the capacity to lift others out of despair simply by embodying empathy, compassion, and integrity. His faith and his values translated into tangible acts that inspired me to take control of my life again and to believe in possibilities I had once dismissed. The life-changing influence he had on me extended beyond immediate assistance. It altered how I approached relationships, challenges, and personal growth. I began to notice the importance of extending kindness to others, of looking past superficial differences, and of valuing human connection above assumptions or prejudices. His actions became a blueprint for the way I wanted to live my own life. They taught me that influence is not measured by power or status, but by the ability to inspire courage, instill hope, and foster transformation in others. Through him, I learned that one person's choices can create a ripple effect that spreads far beyond what we can see. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of his influence was its permanence. The lessons he taught were not fleeting. They became an integral part of how I view the world. I carry his example with me in every decision I make, every interaction I have, and every moment I face uncertainty. He showed me that life-changing influence does not require wealth, fame, or authority. It requires empathy, consistency, and the willingness to act for the benefit of someone else. His impact continues to shape who I am, how I live, and how I approach challenges, reminding me every day that even small, consistent acts of goodness can transform lives. In the end, the Muslim stranger who came into my life did far more than offer temporary help. He fundamentally changed my perspective, my mindset, and my trajectory. He proved that influence is not about what you achieve for yourself, but what you inspire in others. And that lesson has remained with me, guiding me to carry forward the same compassion, courage, and hope that once changed everything for me. His life-changing influence was not just a moment, it was a turning point, a gift, and a lasting legacy of humanity in its most profound form. Human connection is one of the most profound forces in our lives. It shapes who we are, how we feel, and in even the paths we take. I experienced the transformative power of human connection in a way I could never have anticipated through the compassion and presence of a Muslim stranger who came into my life during one of its darkest chapters. At the time, I felt isolated and overwhelmed. My challenges seemed insurmountable, and I had convinced myself that I had to face them alone. I had grown accustomed to keeping my struggles hidden, believing that no one could truly understand or offer meaningful help. And then unexpectedly, someone reached out, not because of obligation, but because of genuine human empathy. That simple connection changed everything. The power of human connection is often underestimated. We think that survival or success depends solely on our own efforts, on our ability to manage adversity alone. Yet time and again, life teaches us that relationships, those moments of shared understanding, empathy, and support, can be the most vital lifelines. When this stranger offered his time, attention, and kindness, he reminded me that I was not alone, even in my silence, even in my fear and doubt. His willingness to be present communicated a profound truth. Human beings are not meant to endure life in isolation. Connection, even in the smallest gestures, has the power to heal, inspire, and transform. What made this connection so powerful was its authenticity. It was not based on superficial similarities, convenience, or expectation of reciprocation. Instead, it was grounded in a genuine desire to understand and support another human being. He listened when I spoke, responded when I needed guidance, and acted when I needed help. Through his actions, I realized that connection is not only about being physically present, it is about emotional presence, about truly seeing and acknowledging another person's pain, and about offering support without judgment. This kind of connection transcends cultural, religious, or social boundaries. It is a universal language that speaks directly to the human heart. The connection I experienced had a ripple effect that extended far beyond the immediate moment. His presence gave me courage, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. It inspired me to engage more openly with the people around me, to cultivate empathy in my interactions, and to offer support to others in their moments of need. Human connection, I realized, is reciprocal. When someone extends genuine care and understanding, it encourages others to reflect that same energy, creating a chain of compassion that can spread far beyond the initial encounter. That single connection reshaped my outlook on relationships, teaching me that even small acts of attention and empathy can produce monumental change in someone's life. Furthermore, This experience illuminated how fragile and precious human connections can be. In times of crisis, the difference between despair and hope can hinge on whether someone chooses to reach out, to notice, and to care. It reminded me that connection is not just about social interaction. It is a lifeline, a bridge that spans fear, loneliness, and adversity. The Muslim stranger who connected with me in my time of need exemplified this principle, demonstrating that genuine human care can inspire resilience, courage, and transformation. The power of human connection is not measured by the number of people we meet or the frequency of our interactions. It is measured by the depth of empathy, understanding, and support we offer and receive. That stranger did not merely help me in a practical sense. He touched my heart, restored my faith in humanity, and showed me that even in a world full of division, the bonds we form with others can change everything. Through his kindness, I learned that connection is both a gift and a responsibility, a reminder that our presence, empathy, and compassion can profoundly impact the lives of others, often in ways we may never fully comprehend. The lessons we learn from acts of kindness, courage, and empathy often carry a universal message, one that transcends religion, culture, nationality, and background. My encounter with a Muslim stranger who entered my life during a period of deep struggle and uncertainty revealed to me the profound truth that goodness is not limited by labels or boundaries. The help he offered, the care he demonstrated, and the example he set were not rooted in obligation or expectation, but in fundamental human values that anyone, anywhere can embrace. This universal message that compassion, courage, and love are accessible to all has stayed with me and reshaped the way I see the world. One of the most striking aspects of this experience was how it challenged my assumptions about differences. Society often teaches us to categorize people, to see them through lenses of religion, ethnicity, or social identity. We are conditioned to notice distinctions rather than similarities, and in doing so, we sometimes miss the universal human experiences that connect us. Yet the actions of this stranger demonstrated that at the heart of every person, regardless of background, lies the capacity for empathy, kindness, and selflessness. His faith informed his values, but it did not limit their reach. The principles he lived by were universal principles, ones that anyone could understand, adopt, and act upon. The universal message extends beyond simple recognition of goodness. It is also a call to action. Witnessing his care and integrity inspired me not just to appreciate human decency, but to embody it in my own life. I realized that the lessons learned from such encounters are meant to ripple outward, encouraging others to act with empathy and courage in their own spheres of influence. When we allow the universal principles of compassion and moral responsibility to guide us, we create a chain of influence that transcends individual identity and touches lives in ways we cannot always predict. One act of kindness, one demonstration of courage, can spark a movement of goodness that spreads across boundaries and builds understanding among people who might otherwise remain divided. This experience also highlighted that the universal message of human values is most powerful when it is lived authentically. Words alone are insufficient. Actions carry weight and create lasting impact. The stranger in my story did not preach or demand recognition. He simply acted in a way that reflected his principles. This authenticity is what makes the message universal. It demonstrates that regardless of faith or culture, living a life grounded in empathy, integrity, and care has the power to transform individuals and communities alike. It is a message that everyone can relate to because everyone has experienced struggle, fear, hope, and the need for connection. Furthermore, the universal message reminds us that kindness and understanding are not conditional. True compassion does not depend on who someone is, where they come from, or whether they can repay it. It exists independently of context, freely offered to those who need it most. In a world often divided by difference, the actions of this stranger illustrated that there is a common thread connecting all human beings: our capacity to care for one another. Recognizing this thread allows us to break down barriers, build bridges, and cultivate a sense of shared humanity. The universal message I carry from this experience is that human values, empathy, courage, compassion, and kindness are timeless, borderless, and unifying. They remind us that despite our differences, we are bound together by the potential to positively influence one another's lives. That Muslim stranger did more than help me in a moment of need. He taught me a lesson that applies to everyone, everywhere, that the power to change lives, to heal, and to inspire lies within each of us. When we embrace this message, we participate in a greater shared human story, one in which every act of goodness contributes to a more compassionate, understanding, and connected world.